Hey, here with EZGZ. I'm working on a transmission today. What I decided to do was take yet another transmission apart to do some comparisons, and this was a early style transmission with a close third and fourth. I put a 148 third and a 104 fourth, and it had a 412 ring and pinion, and it had a different setup than what we've been looking at. What they do on that one, instead of having the nut and using a special socket on the other side, you don't need that special socket. Your shim goes on this side here, and you have 4 bolts that hold it together. I set it out here in the driveway, and just as I was putting it together, I was going to apply heat to it and heat the bearing area of the case, because this is a press fit where your pinion bearing goes down inside here. Now, I had a panic moment, and I said, hey, this thing was giving you trouble in popping out of first gear, so you may have to access it. And what I've done in the past is make my EZGZ mod, and what I do is put a hole right in here, 3/4 inch pipe tap, and an electrician's 3/4 inch plug. Makes a nice flush setup, and I am going to do that here shortly. And before I did, I wanted to just show you the before and after picture. This is a double-sided case where the Freeway Flyer was a single-sided case. I can't show you because the transmission's already together, the Freeway Flyer, but there are a lot of differences in the Freeway Flyer. They use steel shift forks. They use a 17-tooth reverse gear that's a lot stronger. This is the early style reverse gear, and you can see how it sits in this saddle, and normally, there we go, normally you can't keep the damn thing in there, but you can see how it sits in that brass saddle, and you can see the wear on the one side, and all you have to do is just flip the gear over and you can get the other side in. You'll also note that there's those little marks, 2 marks on the edges of the teeth. Those line up with the reverse gear here. You line those up when you have it in the jig. Here you can see the flange, and what I've done is take a bolt, and I'm using this as a guide pin. I stuck it in one of the flanges because you have to get all this in there. It's a real juggling act to get it in the transmission. This transmission, now it has a smaller third gear. This is that 148 third, and it's welded, and 104 is behind. You can't see it from here, but it's also small enough that your slider can slip over it. So you have to be real careful during assembly that doesn't go off, and you'll lose your detents and then have to take it apart and set it all up again. Another thing I noticed, oh boy, the ring and pinion were too tight. I did not have any backlash that I could feel, and the transmission was making noise. So I've added a thicker shim that's sitting in the case that goes between the nut, the retaining flange, and I've added 7/1000s to pull the pinion out this way. You can see how the pinion gear's tapered, and that should help give me a little bit of clearance. Now, this is an Irs Super Diff. If you take your transmission apart, the difference will be obvious. There's 2 extra spider gears in here. It's aftermarket. It was real nice. The factory never put these in, but that's a whole nother video, how to set up a Super Diff, because your spider gears need to all match and make contact at the same time. If you have 2 spider gears from a used transmission, you put them in there, and there's any slop when you assemble it all, if they don't all contact, might as well not even put them in. You have to drill these holes depending on the direction that you're going to set it up for. If it was a mid-engine car, you'd want your oil holes face a different direction. You can see here I've elongated this hole and that's so it has a tendency to scoop oil into the spider gear area inside, and the rest of these would act as a relief to let it out. Of course, when you're sitting still, the oil is just going to migrate in there because your oil level. You're going to have to add them, and I just put enough to go all the way around. 2 of them are elongated and 2 of them are just straight in. Centrifugal force will throw it out. So that's the name of that tune. This would be the starting motor side of the case. Right here in the rib section, I've used this hole saw. It's a 7/8 hole saw. I've cut out a plug so that it does not interfere with the ribs. I've used a 3/4 inch pipe tap that fits inside a socket here so that I can get a nice straight shot and thread this in by hand. Typical thread procedure. I use some AlumaCut oil, and what that is going to do is provide me a access hole to the adjusting lock nut on first gear. And this is a blind plug, electrician's blind plug, 3/4 inch electrical department. You'll find it. You put your silicone on these threads and put it inside there, whatever you want to use for a sealer, and it won't leak transmission fluid. It'll give you access to that plug. It's almost directly across. You can see down there in the case possibly from the other side where you put your oil in, but there's no, you can see it, but you can't do anything with it other than stick a screwdriver in there. But this allows you access without having to disassemble the whole case, and allows you access to this first gear shift fork bolt. And that's what I'm after, because first, second, and reverse are critical that you get those lined up just right. And some people don't have a jig. I have a jig and I still have problems. So I've never had a problem or a case crack or any other issues from doing this. I pounded the crap out of a transmission in my sand rail for years out on the sand dunes. I guess as a little side note I should mention, you cannot use this access feature for the rest of the shift forks. Don't think that you can take a standard transmission and make it into a shift jig and drive it around, because fourth gear adjustment is right up here. You'd be right in this webbing. You can't do that. Reverse is down here low. Where would that be? That would be right about right in here. It's just you wouldn't be able to get a plug to seal. I wouldn't recommend it at all, because you need to be able to see on top what's going on with the gear and so forth. It only works for when you're adjusting first gear, which can affect second gear and reverse. If you're having issues with those, you just want to make sure that your transmission, you put your shifter into first gear, and first gear slider should be touching the face of the gear here, right in here. You look in here with a little light, and you can probably do this in the car. Let me show you the Dune Buggy. It has a IRS transmission. And can you see it there? Do you see any wet spots where it's been leaking? We were just up Sunday and did a nice little run, and I don't see any problems with that. Got her good and hot. It was probably over a 100-mile day, and you don't have to worry about stuff getting in or getting out. That's a little bit different kind of electrical plug. Has a little bigger shoulder on it, but the one I'm going to use on this one is just fine. I didn't have enough room to use this style of plug on it, and all I did was eyeball it. It goes in the same spot in all of them. So just to prove to you that it's not a wishful thinking, or it's just something I've done for years. I guess it's pretty obvious to me, but I just wouldn't want someone to get mad at me and think that they could drill this while it's in the car and do this, because you're going to get all this contamination, all this metal inside your case. This is something that you want to do when you've had to take your car, your transmission apart for some type of a service, and you're doing just prior to the reassembly. Alright, now it's a side view of the transmission with the nose cone off, and you can see by the second position forward that we're in first gear, and we're looking in the inspection hole. Don't get any of that 90 weight in your eye. So that's as close as we can come without overlapping on that webbing. Alright, we're out for a little test drive. Before, it's got a lot of wear on it. It's an older transmission, and it was tight. Now it's a little bit loose. It's a lot better. I think it's going to take a little bit for things to kind of seat, kind of get happy, but I'm very pleased. Get it through the gears before, and I put my EZGZ hole on the side of the case. Of course, I don't think I'll have to mess with it. I'm real pleased about that. I should have let it sit overnight, let that silicone set up, but I am so happy. But yeah, you got to throw everything you know about trannies out the window and start over if you jump into those freeway flyers. Whole different game. I got a Bentley manual, but it didn't cover the newer freeway flyers, and that's the learning curve, and wouldn't trade it for nothing. I won't forget that lesson. But, give somebody some ideas to think about. It's purely something I just do on my own. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. EZGZ out.